Let's see. I think what we're probably going to do next is figure out a way to get you guys all the ugly houses that you want by spending little or no money. How many of you think you want to go buy some ugly houses? Okay? How many of you think you don't want anything to do with ugly houses? That was a trick question. Because you all want ugly houses. You may or may not want to rehab them, but you all want ugly houses. You see, you can't find pretty ones without finding ugly ones. And you can, however, make a choice that the only thing you're going to do is go get the deeds and not do any ugly deals. But if you do, you just throw away ugly deals that you could be making a bunch of money on because you just set your mind that that's all you're going to do. That's not taking very good advantage of this opportunity before you, because you don't have to retail properties to make a bunch of money on them. You can wholesale them if you want to. Get in, get out, never own it, never repair it, never hire a contractor, or never raise capital, never do any of that stuff, and get a big check, as I've heard already several of you doing it this morning. Got people all over the country wholesaling houses. On the other hand, I will tell you that I really think all of you should be renovating some houses. I don't want you to do all renovations, but I think to be a well-rounded real estate entrepreneur that you ought to be working on 1 or 2 renovations at a time at the very least, for several reasons. One, I think you ought to get into getting a property rehabbed and hiring contractors. I don't really think you can be among the elite until you've been through that process, and I think you ought to experience making something ugly into something pretty. And I think you ought to learn about what you can do to properties and all the cool things that you can spend a little bit of money on and make them pretty and worth more. Plus, there's some big fat checks in renovating properties if you use the formula that I'll teach you tomorrow with buying junkers. And it's pathetically easy to raise the money to do it. There's not a person in this room that can't raise all the money they want to buy all the ugly houses they want. The only thing then you have to decide is, do I want to wholesale or do I want to retail it? Wholesaling, you don't have to raise the money usually. Retailing, you do. But on the other hand, usually the check is much bigger retailing than it is wholesaling. You guys have the advantage, or will have the advantage, of buying them at deeply discounted wholesale prices and literally doubling your profit. In other words, you have the ability to collect the wholesale profit and the retail profit out of the same deal if you choose to rehab it and retail it. More work, yes. But, so what? It's not that much work if you systemize it like we're talking about. When you're rehabbing properties, the last thing I want you to do is go out to the property every couple of days to check on the contractor. See, if you get involved in that kind of junk, or you get involved in chasing materials, or you fall in love with Home Depot or pickup trucks, so you're going to hate the rehabbing business. You're going to hate it. When I rehab houses, at the most I visit them once. Donna has to visit them 2 or 3 times, or John. But even then, I don't want them out there falling in love with the property, sniffing paint. They act funny when they sniff paint. Rehabbing is nothing more than buying it and funding it, getting an estimate, hiring the contractor, getting it done, and then using the tools we're going to learn the last day of this event and the next day if you choose to hang around to get it sold quickly. You'll meet Robin Thompson tomorrow night. Robin Thompson does nothing but rehabbing. In fact, the last time I talked to her, about 50 to 60 houses per year with an average profit of $25,000 a house. And that's all she does. That's why she's the best. She's become queen of rehabs because that's what she focuses on, and that's all she does. I've had this conversation with Robin a lot. I don't agree with Robin on that. I think Robin ought to expand her horizons. I think she ought to, I mean, anybody who can retail 50 to 60 houses a year ought to be thinking about all the properties they can get out there by just changing a little front-end marketing, getting the deeds and doing a lot of the pretty houses. See, Kathy's discovered that. Richard's discovered that. A lot of people discovered it. And Robin's fully aware of that, don't get me wrong. But she's, she ain't doing bad. And she just decided she's going to keep doing what she's really good at. And hey, what the heck? Who can blame her? Who can blame her? And again, the way I'd run my business, not necessarily the way you'd want to run yours, and that's just fine. So, it all starts with the ability to find these junkers, though. And the best way I know to do that is the ant farm. And in my experience, there is no better way to find junkers than to ride around and find them or get somebody else to do it for you. The good news is they're really easy to spot. They're ugly. Ugly houses are easy to find. In the ugly house business, we find the house first and we back into the seller to see if they want to sell and if they'll sell it cheap enough to make us want to get involved. In the pretty house business, we find the seller first and back into the house. You see, you can't ride up and down the street and find deals just by looking at the pretty houses. But you can in the ugly house business because they're ugly. Because they're ugly doesn't mean they want to sell them, though, does it? Nor does it mean they'll sell it at the right price. So you start in the ugly house business by pre-screening the house, then you quickly pre-screen the owner, and you get to the deals at lightning speed. Pretty house business, you start by getting the seller to call you, hopefully, and then the numbers pre-screen the deal. So, how many of you have actually listened to the tape and been in the red manual, the wholesale retail manual, and got a feel for what the ant farm is all about? I would not think about running a business where I was looking for ugly house prospects without incorporating some version of the ant farm. Now, I call it the ant farm because we send ants out into the field to find the ugly houses. However, if you're brand new, don't you think it probably makes more sense for you to be your own ant for a while? Get in your car and drive around the ugly neighborhoods. And you need the experience. You really do. You need to get a feel for where your ugly houses are, and I'll tell you, they're going to be in your lower price neighborhoods. Now, don't drive into the ghetto areas. If you fear for your life, there's no need for you to do business there. If bullets are flying around, don't buy houses there. If there are young ladies in short skirts standing on a curb, scantily clad, you don't have to do deals there. Real estate deals, yeah. You don't have to do deals there. You will generally find those are the war zones. And we'll get into the definition of that tomorrow. However, don't be afraid to go into lower priced areas than you probably live in. I'm going to tell you right now, a lot of you live way above where you need to be buying junkers. Those of you who live there, you need to get in your car and drive around and look for the lower priced neighborhoods, because that's where the junkers are at. They're in the lower priced neighborhoods for the predominant amount of junkers. Some of you just need to get out and take a walk where you live to find them. Go jogging. That's it. Go jogging. When you see ugly houses, now you're looking for them. You're going to be shocked how many of them there are out there now that you started looking for them. And they're like a pink Cadillac. You didn't know how many there were till you bought a pink Cadillac. And then all of them are pink all of a sudden. When you go home and you start intentionally looking for these ugly houses, you will not go very far till you start finding them. They're going to be obvious to you. Especially this time of year when the grass is high and the weeds are grown and the trees are overgrown. And there's a lot of junk in the yard and a lot of rotten wood and just needs painted, needs roofs badly. And a lot of them you can just see right in the windows and see that there's nobody in the house and they're vacant. Vacant ugly houses are relatively easy to spot. There's no problem finding them. Taking a drive will yield a stack of them. If you go in, here's a tip. You won't find ugly houses in gated communities. That's probably not where you want to go looking. If you live in a neighborhood where a cheap house is $200,000, you ought to get down in there in the $150,000 bracket to $200,000 bracket looking for them. Most of you live in an area where you should be looking for ugly houses below $100,000 in excellent condition. That's the ARV. Yes, ma'am.
There's an area next to the city where I live that has a history of radon in it. It's West Chicago, Illinois.
Yeah.
And it gets a lot of bad rep. Would you avoid that kind of town?
That's where I'd be focusing my marketing efforts.
Okay, cool.
Wherever you got an area that most people don't want to be in because of some stupid thing like that, man, just go in there and clean house. Because if it does have a reputation for having radon in it, what does that do to the purchase price of the properties? drives them through the floor. However, do you think savvy investors know that radon is something that's not a big deal for them? And in fact, could they have a check for radon before they even buy it? Yes? If you put a property under contract that has radon gas and your buyer finds out it's got radon gas, what do you lose? Your $10. That's the worst you can lose. But if your buyer doesn't even check to find out if it's got radon gas or not, I'm talking about your wholesale buyer now, you understand, your wholesale buyer. If they don't even check, it's not even your problem. It's their problem. If it has radon and you're wholesaling it, it's not your concern. Especially if you do an assignment of contract like we're going to talk about tomorrow. So I want you to go in there. Let's see, some of you live in Houston, for example. Got a lot of cracked slabs, don't you? I love cracked slabs, man. I'm looking for houses with a slant to them. Give me all the cracked slabs that you can find. And in Dallas, they sink in Houston, they come up in Dallas. They do. Give me all the raised houses you can find in Dallas. I don't care. See, I look for all those problems. Give me all the foundation problems you want to give me, because those are the ones with the best deals. Those are the best money in the problems that the general public thinks have the properties general public thinks have the most problem. All right, we're going to get to that tomorrow. Right now, let's stick to the ant farm. Ugly. Can you guys all spot ugly? Who thinks they're going to have trouble spotting ugly? Okay, take a drive. You'll see ugly, as long as you get down low. I have taken several trips. The last trip I took was an hour long, riding up and down the streets in a lower end neighborhood. We found 27 of them in an hour. Never got out of the car. You ride up and down the streets, you see they're ugly or vacant, you take down the address. That's all you got to do. Take down the address. Now they're going to come in three types. Type 1, no sign in the front yard. Best prospects there is, especially when I show you how to find these people. Type 2, a FSBO sign. You're going to find just a few of those on ugly vacant houses. And I'm going to tell you, the uglier the sign, the better. When you find an ugly vacant house with a handmade FSBO sign, you pretty much bought that deal before you even call. Why is that, guys? You've got an unsophisticated seller, unless it's Richard, intentionally creating handwritten signs. You got an unsophisticated seller can't even afford advertisement, or can't or won't go down to Kmart and buy a sign to put on the front of their house. I mean, they just probably don't even know what the property's worth, and they need you as bad as you need them. But that's going to be just a few of the properties you find. Most of them are going to be no sign or listed with realtors. So, can we buy houses listed with realtors, incidentally? Yes, we can, if they're ugly. You will not buy pretty houses through realtors. But we can buy ugly houses because we're going to pay all cash as soon as we get over that hurdle. However, do I want you guys building an ugly house business around listed properties? I do not. Now, I'll tell you that one of my 8 ways to buy properties today is not buying properties that are in the MLS system. And because here's what I've discovered. If I turn you loose into the world of realtors, they'll steal your dreams. They'll take away your financial freedom. Because A, they will work hard to make you think you're stupid, trying to buy a property for less than market value. Come on. Been to one of them seminars? Or B, they'll convince you to pay way too much for the property, get you in a mess, and convince you that making an offer constitutes some kind of obligation to purchase, and it does not. Or they'll just talk you out of it because they'll have more time to work on you than I do, and they'll convince you that stuff doesn't work here. We don't have ugly houses here. We don't have junkers here. The market's too hot here, or all those other stupid, erroneous reasons they come up with to convince people. Now, incidentally, what kind of realtors will tell you all of this? No, not all of them. Only the kinds who don't deal in ugly houses. The realtors who list these kind of junkers, you won't have conversations like, oh, they'll probably get you to try to pay too much. But they won't tell you they don't exist. They can't. They list them. So they know they're there. But people who list pretty houses don't understand the ugly house business. I mean, I don't blame them for that. I don't hold that against them. I mean, I wouldn't go to a litigation attorney to handle a real estate deal either. I mean, I don't ask them to know everything. It's not their job to know everything. However, I've learned that there are people who specialize, and if I'm interested in ugly houses, I want somebody who specializes in the ugly houses. So, if you're riding around and you find junkers, and they're ugly, and they have a realtor sign in front of them, would there be a good indication to you that that realtor understands the ugly house business? Let me see. Their sign is out in front of it. So do you see, we found the houses by riding around, and then we back into the realtors who already have ugly houses listed. You have a pretty good chance of succeeding if you do that. But if you walk into a realtor's office and you say, hey, I want to buy some junkers, they'll probably be friendly and cooperative while they're writing you off, thinking you just come out of one of them seminars or read one of them books somewhere. Because you probably got a hold of somebody who spends their life listing pretty houses and selling pretty houses to owner-occupants. They're not specializing in what you do. So, vacant and ugly, with no sign, vacant and ugly, listed. Let's take the listed first. What do? Well, I just happen to have that covered in my ant farm section here. We're going to come back to postcards. I'm going to let Mr. Roop handle that one. So, what page is that? I wrote an article. It starts on page 137. Skip through the article. You can read it later. Turn over to let me see where it's at here. Where's the realtor script in here? I know it's in here. Oh, I'm sorry. It's in tomorrow stuff. The realtor script's in tomorrow stuff. There's a script that I've actually given you here where you can literally pick up the phone and call a realtor. It's in the steps we're going to do tomorrow. So I'm not going. Let's don't touch on that right now. Right now we're talking about finding the deals. Tomorrow we're talking about calling a realtor and getting a pre-screen. Now, I just want you to know that houses that are vacant and ugly with realtor signs on them are good prospects. However, what are better prospects? No signs. Folks, you will not find better junker deals than vacant, ugly houses with no sign in the front yard. They don't exist. First, you might want to ask yourself, why isn't there a sign in the front yard? It's vacant, it's ugly, it's trashed, it's probably got rotten woods, probably got high grass nobody's taking care of. What does that tell you about the owner?
Out of town.
Out of town, probably. Or?
Deceased.
Well, deceased, I hope not, because that's kind of a hard seller to do business with. At the very least, regardless of where the owner's located, does it tell you they really don't care much about this property? Because if they cared much about it, it wouldn't be ugly and vacant, would it? So, just by the nature of it, wouldn't it make sense that an ugly vacant house with no sign in the front yard would be a good prospect for you to at least work to see if it's going to be one you can buy or not? The answer is yes. The biggest deals are ones with no signs. That's the upside. Also, they're extremely easy to find. How do we find them? We ride around. When we don't want to ride around anymore, we get other people to ride around. What do we call them? Ants or bird dogs. And in fact, if you'll turn into your book there, you'll see the bird. What page is that on? The bird dog 142. I wrote that bird dog instructions for my bird dog. See, you hand that to a bird dog, say, you bird dog, read this. And by the way, if they can't read it, probably don't want them. Bird dog, read this. These are your instructions. But that's only after you've done it a while and don't want to do it anymore, because I want you to do it to begin with. One, I want you to understand your neighborhoods. I want you to get a feel for your neighborhoods. I want you to get out there into the real world, drive around. I want you to convince yourself that those houses are out there. I want you to decide what neighborhoods you may want to send your bird dogs into later. And while you're out in the bird dog riding around, can all of you find an hour, say, Sunday afternoon to go riding around looking for ugly houses? Yes? Okay, while you're doing it, why don't you do this? Why don't you tell yourself, here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go have me an ugly house party. I'm going to go make a trip, decide what neighborhood you want to go into, and get some flyers made up. I don't care if you go home, pop one off your computer, and then go copy them at Kinko. Get some flyers made up that say, we buy houses. They don't have to be fancy, just black and white. I don't care. Just, we buy houses, cash, any condition. Take some of this language, stick it on a piece of paper, put your phone number on it, and take it with you. Don't get fancy. You can fix it. Now, pick a neighborhood. Decide you're going to drive around, give yourself a time limit. I'm going to be in this neighborhood for an hour. 1 hour, 6 hours, you get burnt out. You just cruise the streets slowly. And you ought to have somebody with you. You take one side, they take another. I don't know. Maybe you ought to have two people with you. You drive, they look. Okay? But you're cruising this neighborhood slowly. Get off the main thoroughfare so you don't get clobbered. And just look. Just slow down and look. Oh, incidentally, take a camera with you. If you don't have one, Walmart's got them. They're $20. Take a camera with you. Because when you find these ugly houses, I want you to take a picture of them. And again, we'll get into that tomorrow. But you cruise the neighborhood. While you're at it, when you see a vacant, ugly house, take one of those flyers and tack it to the door, or stick it under the door, or put it behind the screen. While you're there, might as well be there. While you're there, write down the address of the house. All you got to do. Now, I challenge you to do this. You won't do this, but I challenge you to do it anyway. No, I haven't said what it is yet. I'm going to tell them to use these. I challenge you to now, when you see adults out in their yards in this neighborhood, I challenge you to stop and go up to the adults. What's your name? Crystal? Yes. Say, hi, Crystal. I'm Ron LeGrand, and I want to buy some properties in this neighborhood, and I was just looking around for some properties that might be available. Do you happen to know of anybody in this area that has one for sale? Sure. Yeah? Yeah, really? Who would that be? The neighbor? Okay. I challenge you to do that. I dare you to do that. I dare you to do that. Because if you do, by the time you leave that neighborhood, you're going to have a list of leads about that deep to follow up on, and very well may have unknowingly tapped into a deal that you're going to get from Crystal, who didn't even know her house was for sale until you ask her. Because you see, in these type of neighborhoods, there's a lot of people who'd be happy to sell you their house if there's a ready, willing neighbor, and they didn't even, and it doesn't have to be in even that bad a shape. I can't tell you how many houses that I bought in neighborhoods where they weren't really in bad shape at all. People living in them. They just, and incidentally, most of the time, Crystal don't have a clue what her house is worth. Here's the nature of the beast. In the lower price areas, people just don't know what they're worth. In the higher priced areas, they almost all know what they're worth. And that's just nature of the business. So, by talking to Crystal, at the very least, I'm going to get turned on to some other leads. At the very most, I might wind up buying Crystal's house. And wouldn't Crystal be a good one to give a flyer to that will hang around in her house until she leaves the neighborhood? Can't tell you how many houses I bought from flyers that were 3 and 4 years old. They just hang. So, we're cruising. We're putting flyers on vacant ones. We're taking down the addresses to follow up with, all at the same time. And look what Richard Roop has done here. He's got a Post-it note here. And wouldn't this be great? It says, attention homeowners, says notice, attention homeowners, and it's got this, pretty much the same language in it. In fact, you want to read it to him, Richard? I can't even, I have my glasses on.
Yeah, I got one here.
Explain this. Get this dealie down here on the corner.
Okay. Ron's asking me, what is this handwritten stuff on the bottom side? It says number 37, has some initials, and then it says, posted on site only or met with homeowner. That was pre-printed on there.
No kidding. I'm sure you didn't sit there and handwrite them all.
In blue.
Yeah.
And it's to make it look like a UPS Post-it notice. So what you do with these is, instead of handing out flyers to a neighborhood, I mean, that's a good thing to do if you get someone to hand them out, but instead, You take these and you have some kid or yourself or whatever you want to do, and you post one of these Post-it notes on every single door in your farming neighborhood. The neighborhoods that you want to buy houses, that you want to dominate, where I'm going to tell you to mail postcards to.
So instead of flyers, you put that up.
A couple weeks later, you go around and you put one of these on each door, and it says, "Notice, attention homeowner. Looks like their house is condemned." It'll get their attention. Could you not read a yellow Post-it note on your front door? Could you not? 100% readability. Okay. So, attention homeowner. Our investment company is actively seeking to purchase 5 houses in your neighborhood over the next 60 days. Your property has been identified as a good candidate for our acquisition needs. Please call our 24-hour recorded information line below to learn more about how we might buy your house. If you have any interest in selling, we can pay a fair price, buy your house as is, and close on the date of your choice. There's no fee or commission. We do not list houses, in all caps. We are professional real estate buyers. We use private funds that require no new bank financing, so we can close in as little as 7 days. We can offer you immediate debt relief and fast cash. If we make you an acceptable offer, there's no need to put your house on the market or list with an agent. Is that a pretty good message? Okay. So next it says, to hear complete details or determine if your property qualifies, please call the 24-hour real estate hotline at my hotline number, extension, so I can track the marketing, and then, or visit us online at resultsquick.com. So, do you think this would work? This is absolutely brand new. This is what I share with my consulting clients. I am writing a free, not a free, but I'm writing a special report on exactly how to do this. I'm going to give you all copies so you can get some ideas on it. I'm not going to be able to cover it anymore today, but that is a killer. That's the ultimate flyer system. How much do you think it would cost to print those up? In 2 colors, less than 2 cents a piece. Less than 2 cents a piece to print up a two-color flyer.
All right. Should I add this to the copy file, perhaps?
The copy
They're
file?
going to make a copy of your Yellow Page ad.
I actually am going to hand out a copy for everybody.
Oh, you got one of these for everybody?
Yeah.
What a guy. What a guy. Brought one for everybody. Okay.
In fact, I'll go ahead and have them start handing them out.
Good idea. And make sure Donna gets one. Guys, if you didn't do anything with this, buy all the houses you need. However, they must leave the pad and get on the houses. All right. So now, remember I told you you were going to have 3 kinds of prospects. They're going to be listed. You just call a realtor up, tell them to fax you the sheet. We're going to get into pre-screening those tomorrow. That's an easy one. There's no due diligence to do until the realtor sends you the printout. Or if you have access to the MLS, you can go in there and get it yourself. Second, you're going to have signs. What do you do with the ones who have signs? FSBO signs. You call them up. You do what we're going to do tomorrow. Then you have no signs. Now, here's the real key. Here's the real key that if you miss or refuse to do, will kill your bird dog campaign. Since most of your best deals are with no signs in the front yard, you got to do what most people won't to find the people who own those houses. Now, some of those people are right on public record as the owner, and their current address is listed. How are you guys going to get to public record? Where most of you live, you can go right online. Punch in yourcounty.org, not Y-O-U-R county. Your county name.org. And you will probably get right to a place to punch in the tax rolls, and on your tax rolls is every property in your city, current owner's name, current address, and a lot of other information, of course. If you can do that, then you can immediately tell if the address is different than the property address. If the owner's address is different than the property's address, you probably found the owner. We call them out-of-town owners. At the very least, they're another part of the city. They own it, but they don't live in it. Obviously, it's vacant and ugly. Nobody lives in it. And You can notify them using various techniques of which we've yet to cover today. Postcard, mail, or pick up the phone or whatever. Now, it's the ones that you can't find that easy that you need to focus on, because that's where your real money is. Your real money is in the vacant, ugly properties that the owner's address is not current on public record, or in fact you can't even find the owner's name on public record. It's where the real money is, because that's where most people will do the least amount of work to get at the gold. So how would you go about finding those names? Well, if you're going to have carpet installed, who would you call? Carpet installer? If you were going to have a new roof put on, who would you call? A roofer. If in fact you want your taxes done, you would call your accountant. If you want to find people, you call skip tracers. That's what they do. They find people. Skip tracers. Skip tracers locate people. The reason most people don't find skip tracers is because they think they cost too much. Not true. With today's technology, the cost of finding people is very, very inexpensive. Then you might be asking, well, where am I going to find this skip tracer? And of course, my answer is, turn the page. If you turn the page, you will find findthesellers.com. With findtheseller.com, you will tap into Cameron Dunlap's system that he set up, and he spent a year and a half getting set up for you. Cameron Dunlap is one of us, student turned teacher. Many of you have been to an event where Cameron has played a part in teaching. This is a service that Cameron set up because he needed it for himself, and now he's finally gotten around to offering it after he got the bugs ironed out. If you'll take a look at page 145 in your book, for those of you who are listening to these tapes might have it on another page, so we rearranged the manual. But it is in the section where we're talking about the ant farm. You will see that Cameron has got the prices down so low that it is no longer a barrier for you to find people. And in fact, if you just wanted to do one single skip trace, you're only looking at $24.95. And you might want to note that Cameron will not charge you if he does not find them. So what is your risk? Zilch. However, if you will turn the page to page 147, you will see it gets cheaper. If you choose to commit to at least a few skip traces and join one of the plans that Cameron has laid out for you. Take a look at that. For $44.95 a month, you can get 3 skip traces. Now understand, you'll pay the $45 whether you order the skip traces or not. But let me ask you something. If you're not ordering at least 3 skip traces a month, are you doing anything to find ugly houses? Nah. In other words, you're not serious. If you're not going to get serious, don't even pay the $24.95. Cameron would love for you to just pay the $24.95 every time you want to find somebody. That's okay with him. Obviously, he'll make more money that way. If you're going to get serious, take a look at that bulk pay plan down there, because it's the deal of the century. For $997, you can get 100 skip traces over a course of a year. By the way, just for the record, how many is that per month? Duh. How about 8? Who thinks they're not going to track down at least 8 people a month? So you get to decide which plan you want, but I'm going to tell you, if you intend to do anything to find people, and incidentally, skip tracing goes beyond finding ugly vacant owners as well. You're going to have other reasons to track down people. And there's also other services that Cameron does, such as background checks on people, like your tenants, and or people you're doing business with. You can do all of that stuff. And you know what? If I were you, I'd have Cam pull up a dossier on you. I'd say, hey, I want everything that anybody can find on me. And when you get that package, you're going to throw up. You're going to be absolutely shocked at what kind of information somebody can get on you by paying a few dollars that you thought was private. Folks, privacy's dead. You have no privacy in this country, because everything you do is going into somebody's database, and then there's a file on you that you just won't believe what I'm telling you. I had this done on me. Now, I don't have properties in my own name. I just don't, and I won't, and neither should you. But even with that, my dossier is about that thick. Because if I had properties in my own name, it would be about that thick. Because every property that you've ever bought with your name on is going to come up with your neighbors surrounding it and how to reach them. Every corporation or entity that you've ever been involved with will pop up, and all of the partners, joint venture, whatever, anybody that smells like they have any kind of an ownership or leadership will pop up as well with phone numbers, so anybody who's looking for information can contact them. Your medical records, your juvenile, well, not your juvenile record. Actually, they can get your juvenile record if they want it bad enough. Your criminal record, Social Security record, your automobiles. In fact, the serial number of the automobile you sold 5 years ago and who the current owner is will pop up. The engine number. I just can't tell you how much stuff is right there in front of anybody who wants it. Judgments, liens, any filing of any kind, divorces, marriages, and believe it or not, even your health record. None of this stuff is secret. And you say, well, how can they get it? Because they don't have my Social Security number. Nah. Guys, if they put in your name, your Social Security number pop up. You see, they can't get to this information unless they're licensed private investigators. But having a license gives them privy to databases you can't get into. And don't be under the impression you're going to go on all these websites on the internet and pay the fee that they charge you, $12.95 or whatever, and get into the same databases that they can't do it. They have to be licensed investigators to even be, and they pay some pretty healthy online charges. And so those databases are not available to the open public. In fact, they just clamped down on that in the middle of last year and made it even worse. But believe me, anybody with a license can get that information. So Cameron has access to all that. Now, don't think they get in their car and go drive around to find these people for you. They never leave the desk. But because they got databases you can't get into, they're privy to information that you can't get. They will find, now I'm telling you about 65%. Cameron says it's higher than that of the people you send them. They won't find everybody. There's nobody that can't be found. The question is whether you want to spend enough money to go find them, and sometimes it literally will take some field work. You don't need to track those people down. Well, you could. If you get a deal worthwhile, really, really worthwhile, and you just know that there's money to be made in this thing and they're extremely hard to find, it very well might pay you to hire a local private investigator to find that person or entity. But most of the time that's not going to be the case. And so you just look. If you're going to do this ant farm thing, I'm going to suggest to you that you subscribe to the $9.97 for a whole year, because it gets your skip search down to $8, and that won't hurt so bad. You'll fire them in and do the right thing. You'll do the right thing and understand that this is a numbers game. Whether you pay $8 or whether you pay or whether you do the gold plan and you get 5 of them for $70 and it costs you $12, truthfully, that's not the important thing. The important thing is that you understand your ant farm is worthless without the back-end system to track down the best deals. I can't tell you how many people I've taught this to, and when they get to that part, they just stop. The gold is in the back end that people can't find. If you'll just go the rest of the way and harvest that. Now the instructions are in here. Cameron sent this. You're the first people to be offered this. Your terms and conditions are on page 149. Read them. I've sent 2 applications in here for you. Don't submit them to me. Submit them to Cam. I don't want them. I don't want your money. I'm not charging your card. There it is. You turn it in. You get it gone. I brought it. I brought you the bear. Skin him.
How long does it take to get?
Oh, you fax this in today, and you'll be ready to send him leads tonight.
I mean, how long would it take to get the information?
Well, if you look on your, he makes you a promise down here somewhere that he'll have them returned in 24 or 48 hours. It's in here somewhere. I remember reading it. They're quick. In fact, obviously they're going to tell you it takes longer than it generally does, because they want to err on the conservative safe side. Anybody read it? And keep in mind now, if he don't charge you, if you don't find him, he don't charge you. You'll find that down here at the bottom where it says we return reports. There's a $5 report if they fax them. So you'll want them to what? Fax or email? Email them. You want them to email them to you. Why would you want them to fax them? Email is much easier. 24 hours?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good. Besides, what's the rush? You get them back, you're not going to do anything with them anyway. Are you? You know what I like about paying to get this done? Yeah, he sends you the leads back. You will follow up on them out of sheer guilt because you got money invested in them now. Yeah, I like that program. All right. Now, you send them to him. He sends you back the owner's name, address, and sometimes phone number. And from there, we get into tomorrow. That makes it so much easier. And guys, it's a numbers game.
He won't have phone numbers?
He'll have phone numbers on some of them. He'll give you whatever he can get. Remember, they don't put the information on record. They only grab it off the record. They'll get what they can get.
What if you get, don't you get everything but the phone number? How do you get the phone number?
How do you get the phone number? Well, there's all kinds of ways. There's national databases. There's CDs you can buy. And obviously, if the seller winds up being in your city, what would be the most obvious way to get the phone number? Now you want to know the easiest way? It's called 411. If they're not listed, you're not getting the phone number, period. And then you do what these two folks are about to teach you to do. Okay? I will tell you this. There's no better deals worth following up on than the ones that Cameron's found for you, because nobody else is going to be doing this. You realize that the world doesn't even know these houses are for sale, including the seller? Well, if they were for sale, there'd be a sign on them, wouldn't they? They don't even know they're for sale. And now you start sending some of this neat stuff we're going to show you this afternoon. Believe me, I'm telling you guys, you're not going to be able to handle a business. And incidentally, don't go out here and find 200 leads and send them to Cam. You know why? Because you won't follow up on them. Look, generate the leads as fast as your system will allow you to follow up on them. On the other hand, on the other side of that, don't go generate 2 leads and expect to get rich by next Thursday. When you're driving around, if I were you, I would not even come home until you find 20 ugly vacant houses. I'll guarantee you 15 of those not going to have a sign in the front yard. Send them to Cam, and you want to send them in batches probably. Send them to Cam. He'll find maybe 65% of them. He says more. I don't know. Get those back, and then follow up on those. Track them down. Send them letters. Call them. Go whatever you got to do depending on where they're located, and follow up on those. Work the system. Work it, but don't send Cam 100 leads. Get 65 of them back and don't do anything with them. That's the sad part. That's the part I'd hate to see you do.
As you're starting to locate ugly houses and you're getting ready to wholesale them, something that we did was we ran Ron's ad in the newspaper that said handyman special, cheap cash, and our phone number. We developed a list of wholesale buyers. And the ones that were solid buyers, we went back to those folks and said, look, guys, I am very, very good at finding the owners of vacant properties. And I am. I have 18 different ways besides using a skip tracer, which we do. And what ends up happening is, as they are driving around, they will call me and say, hey, Kath, I've got this property I'm interested in. Can you look it up and see if it's something we can do a deal on together? So here you've got this ugly vacant property, and you've already got your buyer. And you're going to make 5, 6, 10 grand on something they gave you to begin with.
See, they don't know how to reach Cam.
Exactly. That works really, really well.
All right. Then, with that said, I'm going to get off. Can everybody in this room go do what we just discussed? Let's see. We ride around, we find junkers, we get addresses, we send them to Cam. Let's see. We ride around, we find junkers, we write down address, and we send them to this service, findthesellers.com. How many of you think you probably ought to incorporate that into your business? I mean, look, you can go to Walmart on Sunday, or you can ride around ugly houses. Usually where you find a Walmart, you'll find ugly houses too. So why not do both? Go to find the ugly houses and go celebrate at Walmart when you get a pile of them. If you take one trip, maybe twice a month, and come back with a pile, you'll have enough to keep you busy on ugly houses. And some of the best deals that I've ever bought are done exactly like that. And we didn't have this beautiful back end that Cam has provided for us. I've paid as high as $75 a lead to find these people and was happy to do it. Compare that to what you're paying. I mean, it's a numbers game. If you spend, let's say you go find 50 leads and you send them in and it costs you $500. Well, actually it wouldn't, would it? Why wouldn't it? Because he's not going to find them all. So you send 50 leads in, let's say he finds 30 of them. and it costs you $10 each on an average. You spend $300. Do you have any idea what 30 owners of vacant, ugly houses are worth to you? I'll tell you what, I promise you there's more money in that pile right there than what you currently make swapping 40 hours a week for dollars on your job. You can't bring me a big pile of vacant, ugly junkers where I found the owners that I can't buy some of those properties. And tomorrow we'll discuss how to buy them. Okay, Richard, talk to me about postcards. Tell me how I can make $1 million by next Thursday. I don't want to do any work. I don't want to spend any money. I just want the money. You can handle that, gang. Well, we're back to postcards, and actually Richard's got his own stuff that may or may not be in here, but your postcard information actually starts on page 120.
Okay. All right. On page 120, there are two postcard systems that we're going to talk about. There's the new one that I'm going to share with you, and then there's the tried and true one that's in your manual right here starting on page 120. Now I usually can speak about 3 hours on direct mail postcards. I'm probably going to spend a lot less time than that today because we got a lot to cover. So it's going to be actually quick. The ultimate direct mail system for buying houses. Putting your buying machine on automatic pilot. I'm going to show you the number one method I've found over the past 7 years to buy houses. It's the only thing that I'm doing. I have probably 24 effective, creative, low-cost ways to get sellers calling me. I've never called sellers. I don't call sellers. I hate rejection. You'd never find me knocking on doors or calling ads in the paper, which are both very effective ways to buy houses. I started my business, my background is in marketing, and I learned a long time ago, I like get prospects to call me. So when I got Ron's stuff in January of '96 to launch my business, I took my marketing background, and that's how I started my business, using marketing. A lot of the things that people go through and decide they're not going to do, and eventually they gravitate towards marketing if they're lucky. There's a lot of investors out there that don't know what you're learning here during these 4 days, that are doing it way too hard. And I have a marketing course, and in that I cover 6 ways to find deals. I quickly go over 1 through 5, and then number 6 is marketing, and that's what it's all about, and that's what I concentrate when I'm working with investors. I'm talking about getting sellers to call you, and also using marketing to get your houses occupied quickly. Before I get into the postcards, I just wanted to show you, I put this together Monday morning. In fact, all of this I put together Monday morning, and I flew out here Monday. I stayed real busy, and I'm surprised I had enough time to do this, but I recently got all my tax assessments from the tax assessor. I've done over 200 deals in the past 7 years. And here's a list of 50 of my properties or so with what the tax assessor says they've increased in value over the last year. Okay? I got over $6 million in properties, and he says that they've increased all the tax assessments. I had a guy put them in the computer, add them all up, $534,000, according to the tax assessor. And my properties went up that value. I didn't even do anything. I just, by owning the properties. And by the way, all my properties that I still own, I'm into the quick flip. But a lot of times they don't have enough money to the ability to cash me out, or enough money for me to give them ownership with owner financing, which you'll learn about in the next couple of days. Well, a lot of them are tenant buyers. So all my houses, I have 57 houses, and all of them have tenant buyers in them. And I don't have the management problem. So that's where you want to gravitate towards, is keeping property. And of course, you never know what's going to happen with your market, whether it's going to go up or down. So my whole philosophy is I don't rely on that at all. That's a bonus, $500,000 bonus. But what we're going to talk to you about is how to mail a 3-page sales letter for about 30 cents a piece. Okay, so you mail out 2,500 pieces for about $750.
if you only got 0.3 to 0.5% response, which is about what you get when you do postcards, whether you do the traditional one that I'll cover real quickly or the new one, you're only going to get about 0.3 to 0.5. And it really depends on your list, but this is what I'm getting to a shotgun approach. We talked about targeting and shotgun. Kathy Kennenbrook has probably the best system for mailing letters to very targeted groups. Okay, mine is on the opposite, and I'll show you the difference. Mine is a shotgun approach, but to a very targeted neighborhood. And so we're getting a low response, but what if you get 0.3? That's like 7 to 13 sellers calling you. How many houses can you buy if you had 7 to 13 sellers calling you? Probably around 1 or 2 is what you're going to expect, if not more. I had a guy do this in Colorado Springs, and I have 4 investors in Colorado Springs where I'm mailing my postcards. We have 4 other investors doing the exact same thing. They're using the postcard that we handed out. And what that does is I got 4 guys doing the same thing I am, but we're all targeting different neighborhoods. So we're not we're not competing with each other. So you're going to buy 1 or more deals. Typically, that would be a good response. And then it's not a deal to me. I buy mostly pretty houses. Most of the calls you get from this type of marketing that I'm going to show you right now are going to be from all types of sellers. Mostly pretty houses. Most of the sellers that call me have nice homes that I buy for little or no money down, taking over their existing debt. And if they have any equity, having them wait for it. Okay? But it's not a deal. My equity spread requirement is $30,000. $30,000 between what I'm going to buy it for and what I'm going to sell it for. If it's not $30,000, I just pass, typically, unless there's a strong positive cash flow or other reasons. But you want to make $15,000 to $30,000 per deal. So, would that help your current income if you can do that? And you're learning a lot of different ways to do that here. And this is just one way. What is this? This is the way to get your phone ringing, okay? And with a lot of other benefits. Okay. Before I get any further into that, I want to quickly go over page 120, 121. Okay. Now, I've done this same system that's in your manual, 120, mailing postcards. Those are regular size postcards. They can't be bigger than 6 inch by 4 1/4. And typically investors will put 4 up on an 8 1/2 by 11 and mail them out that way. If you're doing a postcard campaign, if you're going to use a smaller card, you need a very targeted list. So Kathy will talk about targeting lists. If you have a good target list, any type like a list of people with houses for sale, or a list of expired listings, or a list of out-of-state owners, or the last time I did it, I got a list of people with FHA, VA loans 1 to 4 years old. Okay, and it cost me about 6 cents an address from a mailing list service. They eventually got it from the phone company. I mailed out 6,200 cards. Cost me $1,800. I made $51,000 by spending the $1,800, and that was for everything, postage and everything. That was a lot of work to put that together. But actually how to do that is right here in your manual. And it says it's not a one-shot approach. You got to do it several times. I'll show you my one-shot approach. In fact, on that particular smaller card mailing I did, that was just a one-time deal. I basically bought 2 houses out of that $1,800. Cost me $900 a house in marketing expense, and I just had better things working for me at the time. I'm paying $200, $300, $400 a house that were automatic, systematic. It didn't take my labor. It didn't take a lot of time and energy. I'd rather do that than to do the postcards again. So I have, a lot of things working from a marketing standpoint. But this particular system works good as well. And it's really, if you got a list of people with houses for sale, it's a great strategy. So if you have a good list, you do want to mail to it several times. It says mail about 1,000 at a time. And that's good for a targeted list, okay, to test it out. And according to this, it's going to cost you about 40 cents per postcard. That would be for buying the list, printing the card, getting the labels attached, applying the stamps if you're not using a permit, and about 40 cents a card. So 1,000 cards is about $400. That's with the traditional size postcard. What's the problem with a small postcard? Can you get a 3-page sales letter on a small postcard, or do you have to do a 2-step approach? You have to do a 2-step approach. So you have to drive them to offer a free special report, or drive them to a free recorded message line, or drive them to your website. So a smaller postcard or a smaller ad or a classified or a sign, it's always, to me, it's a 2-step approach. Whenever you can cost effectively get your entire marketing message out, then you want to do that. And I've discovered how to do that with oversized postcards. Now, there's some examples of postcards that you could use. These are good. And again, it's a matter of who you're going to mail them to, and then how are you going to get them out. And then how do you put that on automatic pilot? Okay, I'm going to show you how to put it on automatic pilot. So imagine being able to mail a 3-page sales letter. How many of you guys got the large postcard? That's laid out what's called an advertorial. It looks like an article, and I'll explain that a little bit more, but it's designed to get attention. I've crammed a 3-page sales letter onto one oversized postcard. It's almost the maximum size allowed. But with that postcard, I can mail a 3-page sales letter without printing envelopes, without printing 3 pages, without folding, stuffing, sealing, hand addressing. Kathy's going to talk to you about hand addressing. That's the absolute best way to address letters. Now, you don't have to do that with postcards. Why? Because with letters, you have to make it look personal so they open it and it doesn't go right into the trash. How many times have you gotten something in the mail in an envelope which had a label on it, right? And just went right in the trash unopened because you knew it was mass mail. Happens all the time. People sort their mail over a wastebasket. So when you're sending letters, you have to hand address, or there's another article in your manual that it's called the how to increase your direct mail response using sex without offending anyone. Okay, I'll point that out a little bit later, but there's a website where you can download a font that looks like an old typewriter. So that's the next best way to address envelopes, is you put that on your computer, you print the addresses right on the envelope, and it looks like an old typewriter font. That's the second best to hand addressing. Now you can do this without applying stamps, without paying 37 cents for first-class postage, without trying to make it look personal, without trying to get them to open it, and without buying a mailing list where it's going to cost you 3 to 10 cents an address to get a good targeted list. That's typical. Okay. You heard that me and Kathy both use direct mail. For many, many years, I did not. Because I was fortunate enough to have a marketing background when I started my business. And what you see on this oversized postcard, if you imagine that about the size of a flyer, 8.5 by 11, and having that 8.5 by 11 3-column message with that headline inserted into the newspaper. Can you imagine that? Okay. I used a low-cost weekly community newspaper to run this message I've been doing it for 7 years. That's what I started it probably in May of '96 is how long I've been using the same ad. So once you have a good ad, you don't have to get creative. I'm lazy. I am extremely lazy. So when I found that I could put get a large ad in a very narrowly targeted newspaper, and all I had to do is call them up and say, run it again, and I would be buying 2 or 3 houses every month from an expense of like $375. That's a pretty good system. Now, I'm pretty creative, and I like to test many different things. You guys got some of the newest stuff. This is one of my newest things, and that Post-it note is one of my newest things. Okay, but I really And I didn't like the trouble of getting the mail out. Who am I going to have prepare it? Who am I going to mail it to? Who's going to print it and all that? So for many years I didn't do direct mail. Now that is all I'm doing. There's two ways to go. Personal looking letters or postcards. So you can, what's good about direct mail is it's narrowly targeted. You can be very specific to who you send it to. You want to make it look at personal, and then you're typically on a letter, it's going to pay 70 to 95 cents to get everything put together and in the mail, including the labor. And I don't think you should be doing this. I think you should hire people. You can do it now if you want, but everything that you learn here at Ron's event, you want to look at ways of getting other people to do those things. The whole thing about the ant farm and driving around and getting ugly houses and sending them to camp. All right? That's a killer system right there. But I'm not going to do it. All right? I'm too busy. But I'll be glad to hire someone to do that for me. Okay? Now I have a stack of leads on my desk right now about a foot high. Okay? The last house I bought was the guy who called me 3 times. Because I just don't have enough time to call everybody. That house I bought for $56,500 2 weeks ago. I sold it on Saturday to a tenant buyer. Bought it for $56,500. I borrowed $90,000 from a hard money lender because he said it was worth $150,000 fixed up. I thought it needed $20,000 in repairs. I borrowed $90,000. I paid $56,500, and I paid about $5,000 in points. I walked away with $30,000, so I had all my rehab money and holding money. Okay? I thought I was going to sell it for $120,000. He said it was worth $150,000 fixed up. So I put an ad in the paper. It says $137,000 fixed up, or make offer as is. Fixer upper, $137,500 fixed up, make offer as is. I got under contract. I had 3 buyers Saturday. I took the guy who had the most money down. He gave me $5,000 down. I sold it for $109,000. $109,000 as is. And that is actually one of the best deals I've done. But I didn't have to get a large down payment from him. He's going to do $10,000 worth of work before he moves in. He already gave me $5,000, so I can do owner financing. I can't even remember why I started telling you that story. All right. With direct mail, you can hit every home in a targeted neighborhood. Let's talk about that.